Now my shop's getting a bit messy with all this extra wood I've got lying around. Today we're going to use it all up and make as many charcuterie boards as we possibly can. As you saw in the intro, we already have some boards that have been planed down and jointed from previous projects. I do have a couple of full-size pieces of rough lumber laying around the shop, so we're going to cut them down, plane them, and joint them just like the other boards. Now watching me plane and joint boards is pretty repetitive, so we're going to skip to the table saw. Now that we've got everything planed down and jointed, we're able to start making these inlays. Inlays are these little pieces of contrasting wood that we put in between the other boards. It gives us the ability to make different patterns inside of our charcuterie boards. We're not going to go too overboard making these. We don't really need a whole bunch. Alright, so now we got all of our inlays cut out. It's time to start designing and building these charcuterie boards. Now all 4 types of wood that I'm using in these boards are walnut, maple, cherry, and ash. But pretty much all of my inlays will be walnut, maple, and cherry. They all go together quite nicely. Here's a quick video that's on my Instagram of me organizing some of these boards. If you want, feel free to go over there and follow me. The boards that I'm piling on the right here are around 20 inches long, and the shorter ones are around 13. Before I do anything else, I'm going to clean up the shop. It's getting a little messy for me. Alright, so this is our first batch of boards here. Now I only have a certain amount of clamps, so I can only make a certain amount of boards. So each batch that I make, I can only put out 6 each time. The type of glue that I'm using here is called Titebond 3. It's FDA approved for indirect food contact, and that's why it's the recommended glue to use to make cutting boards. Now, we're going to take all these boards out of their clamps and put them through the planer. One of the tools that I wish I had was a drum sander. It would save me so much time. But for now, we're going to use the planer and just spend a little extra time on the orbital sander. Before we get to that sander, we're going to have to square up these ends and then put a little chamfer on the bottom of this board. If anyone's wondering why I scribble pencil on these boards before I sand, it just makes it easier to keep a steady sanding pattern throughout the whole board. I know that once all my pencil is sanded away, it's almost time to change grits. If you look in the bottom left corner, you can see that little chip out on the bottom of the board. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's fixable. We'll just sand it out and try and blend it all in. Before we finish up sanding the first batch, we're going to glue up the second one. That way, when we're done sanding the first batch, the second one will be ready to work on. Now sometimes the glue up on these boards isn't perfect. To fix this, I take a little bit of glue and sawdust and make a little paste. That can go into the crack and fill it up. Here I am finishing the first batch of these boards with some mineral oil. Now the camera battery died halfway through, so you don't get to see the whole finishing process, but you can see the final product. Batches 2 and 3 actually got finished together because that's just how the timing worked out. This is me unclamping batch 2, gluing up batch 3, unclamping batch 3 the next day, and getting them all ready to be planed. This clip of me planing down these boards is actually sped up 11,191%. This clip was originally 19 minutes long. This clip was sped up 7,200% and was originally 6 minutes long. We're going to do the same thing we did with the first batch of these boards and put a chamfer on the bottom. I think it gives it a cool look. As you can see on the left hand side of the screen here, that's a whole bunch of charcuterie boards that I've had in my shop for a long time, but I never got around to finishing them. So today's the day. Now don't be deceived. It looks fast on the screen, but these boards took a long time to finish in real life. I sand my boards all the way up to 400 grit. It's definitely not necessary, but personally, I think it's just a lot better. I like my boards to be really smooth to the touch. Here I am using my vise to sand the chamfers on these boards. Then I'll spend a couple hours sanding down all the faces. But I'm not here to waste your time with hours of sanding footage. We're gonna skip that and get to the finishing process. With our final batch of boards here, we're gonna unclamp them, plane them, cut them, chamfer them, and then sand them just like the other ones. I think the most satisfying part of making these boards is the finishing process. I love the way the mineral oil pops the grains. I built 43 charcuterie boards in a couple days. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe. And leave a comment down below, what's your favorite type of wood?